Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hemlock podcast. This is take 2 for us because we just did a bunch of recording and realized I made a really dumb mistake and didn't have one of the tracks going. So
we're going to rehash our conversation.
We're going to do this all again.
Pretend like we didn't talk about any of this yet.
Never happened. Yeah, exactly. What did I get in trouble for right off the bat? So, everyone, this is Lorenzo Ans, good friend of mine, bandmate. Welcome to the Hemlock podcast.
Pleasure to be here.
As our first guest on the podcast. So, I'm super pumped. It gets kind of lonely here just talking by myself. So it's good.
I'm here to keep you company.
I would appreciate that, man. It's good to have somebody to bounce ideas off of. You are pretty outspoken yourself.
Try to be.
On the social medias about stuff, which I super appreciate.
I have my opinions. I try to stay respectful and I enjoy talking about all the hot topic issues.
Yeah, man. Love it. Some quick housekeeping. As always, Hemlock Podcast, thehemlockpodcast.locals.com. If you want to become a financial supporter or just join the community, we can't upload full-length episodes of the podcast until we have 100 members at least. So faster we hit that, the better. So if you haven't joined on Locals yet, go ahead and join up. Either as a financial supporter or not. Either or is great. 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts.
We need them.
We need them.
He needs them.
You can say
I need them for this one.
I like you taking ownership already, though. I love that. That's good. Yeah, some of the hot button stuff we're going to talk about today got us into some controversy with some people that don't like our opinions very much.
We plucked some cords
early on. Yeah,
I plucked some cords. I'm really taking.
Yeah, you're taking too much over that.
Yeah,
don't do that to yourself.
Okay.
Just got like a lot of hate in the ratings and the YouTube comments and likes and stuff right off the bat. So if you are like-minded, throw us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. I love reading little nice comments. It just warms my heart and encourages me because I'm getting a lot of flack off the bat. So you can look forward to that.
Right.
Make sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts or YouTube or Spotify, whatever it is. Mailbag. I want to start a mailbag segment. So
mail him a bag of something.
Get the bag. I want your comments. I want your discussions. A lot of the comments we got early on were fairly toxic. Some of them were really good, and I appreciate those ones. I want to hear your thoughts. And the mailbag, basically asking questions and commenting and stuff that we address, and where I can call you out and give you a shout out. We're going to put it behind a paywall when we launch our website, probably in a week or two. So get ahead of the curve, go to just get commentated stuff, and I'll be doing that for free for the first little while. And then our sponsor, Good Food. Not really a sponsor, but but we recommend them highly. And if you use the link in the description, you get $40 off your first box of Good Food, which is a food delivery service. Mm-hmm. So like pre-made meals, all the ingredients, you cook them yourself. Have you done any of those?
I have not. I've seen a lot of ads, and I have yet to try it. I honestly am really tempted.
Use the link, bro. Good Food is like, my wife and I have tried all of them. Like every one we can get here, we've gone through. Good Food is like the best among them. It's like restaurant, fine dining quality that you cook yourself. I hate like prepping and grocery shopping. I love cooking, so for me, I love eating good food. It takes all the stuff about cooking that I don't like out of the equation, and just here's the exact amount you need, and it's delicious, and it's a recipe you didn't think of yourself. Right, that's great. Anyways,
puts the fun back in cooking.
Totally, yeah, exactly, totally. That's it for housekeeping. Let's jump in. What did I get in trouble for right off the bat? Kamala Harris. We just talked about this. So how did you know?
I don't know.
Kamala Harris. Basically, a lot of the hate comes from one intro because it did a satirical intro. So satire is comedy, where it's like I don't actually mean the things I'm saying, and I'm doing it for a laugh. Hopefully, a lot of people did not find what I said very funny.
A lot of people don't understand satire.
Also true.
I just find that sad because there's so much comedy. There's so much good in satire.
100%. So basically, what I said is I use the phrase "she slept her way into power," which, if you don't know the story, she basically, well, you do now because I told it to you about a half hour ago. Willie Brown was a guy who I forget his title right now, I'm blanking. He was a really powerful politician in California, right? We know the hot mess that is Californian politics. he was married. He was estranged from his wife. So he was having an affair with Kamala Harris, who was 30 years his junior, and then rewarded her 2 political positions, like high-ranking political positions that were high-paid, low work, and she wasn't qualified for it, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I use the phrase "slept her way into power," because she exploited a sexual relationship with a man who was 30 years her senior to get high-ranking political positions, that's what I was trying to say. So I was using the stating a fact euphemistically. Apparently that's sexist and misogynistic.
Which I don't understand, because it's not, I mean, to be able to actually just state the obvious, observe what happens, there's nothing wrong with that. There should be no offense. If something happens, it's what happened.
Yeah.
You can't take that away. And
totally.
I mean, there's euphemisms that you can use, but regardless, if it happened, you state what happened because you observed it or everybody else observed it. There's nothing wrong. If Trump had gone through the exact same thing, oh man, we would be hearing about it. And all the media is left, right, and center. Well, probably not right, but all the left media, because they're mostly all left.
That's not true though.
Let's be real.
Because the right, I find, calls him out on stuff. That's
really?
what I appreciate.
Yeah.
It's more consistent.
You're right.
Yeah.
But anyways, you'd be hearing way more on it.
Yeah.
And just the defamation on it.
Sorry, way more on it or way moronic? Sorry, I just thought that was a good little.
No, you would just his whole brand would be completely defamed over it. Compared,
it has been. Yeah.
It has been over probably, I would say, a lot lesser issues in comparison.
I don't know if I'd say lesser.
Maybe.
I don't say lesser. Like, he said some gross stuff, and I don't want to defend. Yeah. I don't want to get cornered into defending Donald Trump. His whole Stormy Daniels stuff, it's gross. It's like, he's had affairs. He's been married 3 times. Dude's sexual ethic is not something to look up to. No,
right? For sure not.
So,
yeah. So,
but you're right. The amount he gets called out for that versus someone on the left with an equally disgusting sexual ethic doesn't get called out.
It's a double standard.
Right? Yeah, totally. And I think kind of a through line that we're going to run into a few times today is like the buzzwords and the wordplay and like kind of the leftist control over the vocabulary, the cultural lexicon, right?
Yeah.
And that phrase, which I didn't aware of how triggering the phrase was going to be, but like slapped her way into power or slapped her way to the top, I think is the actual phrase, was what triggered people on it, right? And all I was saying was like, look, this woman exploited a sexual relationship for positions of power that she did not deserve, right? That she wasn't qualified for, or even if let's say she deserved them, right? Even if she deserved them, they were like little work, high paying positions that she wouldn't have gotten without exploiting a sexual relationship, right?
Her body, her choice.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. An empowered feminist, right? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with exploiting a relationship and getting some high paying positions out of it, right? I used it as a negative thing because I think that's gross to do that. And if it was a guy, if there's a powerful female politician, let's say Kamala Harris is now the vice president. Let's say some dude, some ambitious young politician gets into a relationship with Kamala Harris, right? Starts she's married right now, so maybe it's almost equivalent. Started sleeping with her, and she awarded him a bunch of like high-paying, low-work positions. I would say he slept his way into power.
Absolutely.
As soon as I went with Kamala Harris. Yeah.
And the media would probably even flip that around and say, "Hey, he abused her, in some way." They'd flip it on him.
Maybe. And actually,
side note.
But I think, that actually kind of brings up the flip side of this, which was I got accused of, what was the word in here? Someone commented
misogyny.
Saying, what's that?
Misogyny?
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, so I got called misogynistic for saying that phrase, which I don't think is fair or makes any sense. But she says, however, utilizing sexist phrases that are weaponized against women working in male-dominated industries doesn't really aid your argument. It's also insensitive towards the 60% of female American voters who have experienced sexual harassment, with 70% of those women stating it happened at work. Where's the correlation there? I said one woman used a relationship for political power, right? I said nothing about sexual assault, which is complete disgusting, and castrate or kill the guys that do it, right? Where's the correlation there? Did I miss something?
I don't see it, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't say. I guess it's just utilizing the sexist phrase, which you can debate whether what I use was a sexist phrase or not. Because I go on in that video, to like call out Joe Biden's sexual deviancy because he's a weird creep who keeps touching little girls. You can look up compilations of that, like where he's like grabbing little girls' chests at like meet and greets on camera, right, in public with a bunch of other politicians and families and stuff. And it's weird and creepy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's gross too. So it's like feminism, right? I should apply an equal standard to women because equality, right? Anyways, so that's Kamala Harris. Anything else on that?
No.
No, perfect. Okay.
Put that one to bed. She did.
Nice. That was good. That was good. You snuck that one in there. Like Willie Brown did. Sorry, okay, well, moving on.
Yikes.
Good grief. Okay, so the next one was defunding the police. This was a fun one. Here we go. Okay, so defunding the police. I was talking about how BLM, a lot of their whole thing was we should get rid of police because of police brutality. I've talked about the stats on police brutality. Mm-hmm. It's nowhere near as big of a problem as the news and BLM makes it out to be, if you're looking at the stats. And they use that to push this defund the police narrative, right? Yeah. So the comment I got was, let's talk facts. I love facts. You love facts. He quotes me because I used a study saying that, and this is Black Americans. So 61% of Black Americans want the police presence to remain the same. An additional 20% said they wanted more police presence, with 19% wanting less. I said 81% of Black people do not want to defund the police in the States. 60% want it to stay the same. 20% want more, right? 81%. What did I say? 61% plus 20. 81.
Which means if you defund the police, 81% are going to be unhappy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but the thing is, he's like, it's not talking about what does the amount of police presence have to do with funding them or defunding them. If you remove funding, if you lower funding or you defund the police, is there going to be more or less police presence? Less, right?
Less.
Is that a hard conclusion to reach?
No, not really. To be honest.
Less money for the cops means less cops. Less people are incentivized to be cops. Less people on payroll.
Less like a dissolvement of the quality of training.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, moving on to the kind of the comments in this thread. He goes on. The article then goes on to specifically state that the vast majority believe reform is needed, with upward of 90% favoring specific reforms aimed at improving police relations with the communities they serve and preventing or punishing abusive police behavior. That's literally what we mean when we say defund the police.
So then say reform.
Don't
say defund.
I love the use of the word literally there. That's literally what we mean when we say defund the police, is something entirely different from defund the police.
So you should literally use the literal word that you're trying to say.
Right?
Reform.
And they try to say like, oh no, but if you say defund the police and then what you actually achieve, you say something this extreme and your agenda gets advanced a little bit.
Yeah.
No, that's not what happened, because you look at Minneapolis or Chicago or anybody that's actually tried defunding their police departments, and Minneapolis is actually increasing funding now, like a year later. Quietly, after Joe Biden got in and BLM has been swept under the rug, right? Because the crime rates went up. Riddle me that, Batman. You know, 1 + 1 = 2. It's crazy how math still works in this crazy society. But defunding the police meant defunding the police. It didn't. And by the way, we're both for police reform, accountability.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Neither of us are for police brutality, right?
I mean, anything can be reformed. Anything can be improved. Sure.
Yeah.
That's always the goal in societies, to improve things, reform things. As issues come up, reform them.
Yeah. But Lorenzo, you look like the kind of person who likes cops beating people up for no reason, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, it's just ridiculous what we get accused of. But reform, absolutely. Accountability, absolutely. And does better training for cops, so less of that happens, does better training require more or less funding?
Well, it will require more time, more manpower, probably less money.
Right?
Oh, wait a second. I got that backwards.
Yeah. That's what blows my mind. And this goes on to some of this thread.
Unless they're considering bringing down the wages, then maybe it'll be less.
Right. Which is, bringing down wages is definitely going to mean better cops. Right? Gosh. This is someone else. You do realize the incredible amount of funding the police has, and you really don't think defunding them will help the community for the better? No, I don't. By creating proper mental health services, proper outreach care, proper victim response, better training, more or less money? Probably more.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Anyways, I think fundamentally, she goes on to say, I think fundamentally we all agree upon human rights and such, but big yikes at you for being a dick.
Not respectful.
That's nice. Thanks. Anyways, yeah, so I think we can move on from this. Oh, I had someone else. Thank you, Mr. Cis White Christian Male. It's really disgusting to see you support such a racist and disgusting platform. But then again, you believe people like me do not. And this is, I'm not even sure what she means, people like me. She's actually a good friend of mine from a while back. And love her to death still. Like, beautiful soul. She's gone through some stuff, right? And I'm not going to get into all that, but I'm not even sure what she means. It's been a while since we've talked, right? But then again, you believe people like me do not deserve rights, and that the biggest problem BIPOC face is fatherlessness. Kind of a disgrace to call yourself a Christian when you promote hate. So again, I don't know what she's talking about. People like me don't deserve rights. I believe everyone deserves equal rights, right?
Yeah.
Under the law, unequivocally, completely. And fatherlessness is a massive problem in
Absolutely.
the BIPOC community, right?
Yeah.
And because fatherlessness is attributed to all the things they don't like. They don't like sexual assault rates. They don't like crime rates. They don't like low education rates. They don't like people not graduating high school. They want to reform all those systems to get people to do more of that.
Yeah.
All of those are attributed to fatherlessness, right? Decreased fathers in the home means increased rates of all the negative crap I just listed, right? Maybe that's a segue there, because people like me do not deserve rights. I believe there's something kind of like some kind of trans thing happening there, which is the next one, conveniently on our list.
Wow.
Who
knew?
Yeah, exactly.
Not me.
So what? Same intro as the Kamala Harris thing. This, like, the satirical intro I did, but I had someone else, and she said this very respectfully. Again, this young lady she actually used to be one of my old youth. I was a youth leader for a long time. Okay. And stated very respectfully, listed her sources, love it. And you know who you are, and I respect the way you're able to discuss things. I love it. But I disagree with you. So she goes...
which is okay, contrary to popular belief.
What?
We can have disagreements.
Oh.
And still respectfully converse.
And still be friends?
Absolutely.
What?
I know.
Crazy. You radical you.
I'm so radical.
She said basically, I made a comment about Elliot Page, right? Who was formerly Ellen Page, born a biological female, now identified. She was a gay biological female and is now a trans male, identifies as a trans male, right? And I referred to her. I'm going to refer to her as her because, again, if you were trans, right, you were born a female, I'd probably, in a conversation with you like right now, be super respectful. I'd refer to you as a he if you were born a female, right? Okay. Became a trans male. Because personally, I'm not a dick, despite the comments. I'm not a jerk to people in real life, right? Mm-hmm. We're talking, or it's a public forum, it's a public platform. We're talking about broad societal implications, right? I believe there is male and female, right? Mm-hmm. XXXY, male gametes, female gametes, right?
Science,
you
biology.
Make eggs or sperm, and that binary proliferates throughout the entire animal kingdom, right? There's male and female, and gender ideology, I think, is a bunch of nonsense, right? So I referred to Elliot Page as a her, and I dead named her because I used her name Ellen Page to describe who I was talking about, because not a lot of people knew she had become Elliot Page at that point, right? Anyways, she goes, your comments about Elliot Page are homophobic and insensitive to the struggles faced by trans people. Actually, really brief note, the fact that she used the word homophobic is curious to me instead of transphobic, because homophobic, if she believes what she's saying and that a biological female can become a biological male, a man can become a woman, what I said was not homophobic, because she went from being a gay female to what? A straight male. As far as I know, she's still interested in women. She was married to one. I think actually they split up, but not apparently from the transgenderism. But so now she's a straight white male, right? If she believes what she's actually saying, that can actually happen. So what I said was not homophobic, because now she's straight.
Right.
How can I be homophobic to a straight person?
Yeah.
Right? I think it belies her entire point, honestly.
Yeah.
But she says 67% of transitioning people thought about suicide pre-transition, right? You don't need to understand people in the LGBTQIA+, that acronym keeps getting longer.
So, yeah, it does.
You don't need to understand people in that community in order to love and be kind to them. Mm-hmm. So, thoughts?
Well, what was the stat on the suicide? What did you just say?
Oh, we did this the first time?
Yeah.
oh, this one. 67%?
67%?
Yeah. 67% of transitioning people thought about suicide pre-transition.
Pre-transition. Okay, so, I mean, there's an inherent issue if somebody's pondering the idea of committing suicide. Totally. And this goes back then to what the issue is, and it's probably seated in some kind of mental, emotional instability. So, do we want to talk about that? Sure, let's dive into that. Let's just look back in the last 20 years, and we have a huge list of things, disorders, mental disorders, that have been slowly shifting to date. That list has been shrinking, and a lot of these disorders are now or conditions are known as things to be accepting of.
Lifestyle choices.
Lifestyle choices that are now who defines a person, and now you should love that person, and therefore they are not to be looked at as treatable items or treatable things, conditions. They are who the person is, and if you may say anything against them or suggest that it's not normal, now you've offended the person.
Yeah. You hate that person, or you fear that person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's a problem. So transphobia. Somebody's having issues.
I hope my landlord's kid is okay. That didn't sound good.
So, okay, let's talk. Yeah, so there's the whole mental instability thing. I think there's also, let's just talk about the word transphobia or homophobia or any word that sort of is of that nature.
Yeah.
You have phobia, fear, and then you have whatever it is. It could be literally anything. Transphobia in this case. I'm not fearful of a transphobia or of a transgender person. I'm not fearful.
Even if like a trans person walked in right now, you wouldn't like run away and like hide?
No, they're not monsters. They're not like there's nothing to be fearful of.
Totally.
It's such a twisted word, a conglomerate. It just doesn't fit in society, right?
Well, it's been weaponized, right? It's been weaponized because I talked about like Islamophobia, right?
Right.
So Islamophobia was a term coined to like basically demonize people who had concerns about radical Islam.
Right. Yeah.
So like, and back then, phobia, that first one was kind of the first of the phobia terms that like the colloquial ones we use. That actually made sense because there was like a fear of violence. There was a lot of extremism, a lot of terrorist attacks. ISIS was running around, that kind of thing.
Yeah, very much associated with it, and totally. So there's inherent fear that justified the phobia part of that vocabulary. But now when it's been applied to all kinds of other things like homophobia, transphobia, etc., it's misguided because we're not afraid. I'm not afraid of a transgender person or a homosexual person.
Yeah.
So that's an issue.
Totally.
I think that just twists the whole argument and presents it seeds to the surface a lot of discontent and a lot of hatred and like you're not communicating properly.
It goes back to that through line of like the leftists manipulating language, like the cultural lexicon, where it's like whether it's slept your way to the top. That's a triggering phrase. You can't use that. Or you're a sexist and a misogynist just for using that, right? Regardless of the context. Or defunding the police. Well, we didn't mean defunding the police. We meant reform the police, right? We didn't mean transphobic and homophobic and stuff mean something entirely different, right? Yeah. They attribute and they weaponize. They're weaponized to attribute something that isn't true to people who have questions or concerns about whether is a lifestyle choice or a mental disorder, right?
Yeah. So we should reiterate, we should all be striving to say what we mean, not try and bring up a word to use, but then what you mean something other than what the actual words mean. It's just it creates a lot of confusion in communication with one another, and then it causes all kinds of turmoil and disrespect. And that's where things start to break down, is when you can't communicate about these issues because there's all kinds of different thoughts and ideas about what this means, but actually it means this literally, but then you mean this something else literally, but you're using this word, and then it's just you're butting heads, and it just creates all kinds of chaos.
Doing that.
Yeah.
When we were talking before, you used a broken arm analogy.
Yes, broken arm analogy. So like so somebody has a mental condition. They're diagnosed, they have something mental. It's not something that you see necessarily. But think about a broken arm. Somebody who has a broken arm should not be embarrassed that they have a broken arm.
Totally.
They can wear that on their sleeve. and they will be, everybody can see, the guy got a broken arm.
Yeah.
If we choose to say, actually, no, you don't have a broken arm, or maybe it's, your broken arm is okay. That's actually who you are, and I love that. I love your broken arm. Yeah. I love that about you. So, so therefore, you don't need to be treated because that's part of who you are.
Yeah.
Well, that's cruel. That's not loving.
Yeah.
It's, and so in the same way, society tends to look at mental illnesses in a bad light.
Yeah.
Really demeaning way, really, because people are embarrassed that they have a mental illness. Well, no, you shouldn't be embarrassed about a mental illness the same way you shouldn't be embarrassed if you have a broken arm.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just very unloving for all of these conditions to be slowly normalizing as who people are, and people get offended if you say, oh, you have this mental condition, or like, don't say that about me. But then now you're denying them the proper treatment.
Yeah.
And then you're just making the issue worse because now,
Totally.
You don't get anywhere.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like that's the thing is she was accusing me of not being loving or kind.
Yeah.
Our argument is totally from a place of love and compassion.
Absolutely.
Right? It's a disagreement about whether it's a lifestyle choice or a mental disorder. Because talking about stats here, actually she gave her sources too, which is great. She says 67% of transitioning people thought about suicide before they I have such a hard time with that word today. Before they transitioned, right?
Yeah.
Some more stats. 40% of trans people commit suicide. Actually do it.
Before and after.
Both pre and post transition, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that stat doesn't change when they're now in the gender they supposedly feel like they are, right?
Right.
Or they feel like they should be. So
the issue's still there after they've gone through this process.
Yeah.
And that tells you usually if there's an issue, the treatment should improve the outcome. Totally. Like the outcome should be improved by treatment. So either you're not treating properly or you're treating the wrong thing or you're just completely off the rails.
Totally.
With what you're, know.
And the response to that has been like, okay, well, the reason it's not that side effect is not being treated, the suicidality of transgenderism, is because people are mean to them. People are cruel to them, right?
Yeah.
The only equivalent suicide, 2 in 5. That's a 2 in 5 rate, right, of trans people committing suicide, which is terrible and awful, and I hate that. I have nothing but empathy for those people, right? The only equivalent suicide rate in history, Jews living in Nazi Germany. So either you make the argument that trans people in North America in 2021 are experiencing the same kind of barbarity and savagery that savagery, that's something we'll cover later as well, that Jews living in Nazi Germany were experiencing, or there's something else going on. Right. Some people would make that argument that like it's as bad as Nazi Germany. I just think that comes from historical ignorance.
Yeah.
Right. And then even to go into like kind of to address what you're talking about, mental illness not being called mental illness anymore, mental disorder. To use the history of that, the DSM-5, which is actually it's viewed by a lot of the medical profession as a lot of people think it's been pretty politicized, but transgenderism, which is now called gender dysphoria, which it used to be called gender identity disorder, which used to be called transsexualism. It just like evolved with a politically correct tidal wave, right? Gender dysphoria sounds nicer than gender identity disorder, but it also changed to say that gender dysphoria, the suicidality associated with gender dysphoria is due to the depression that comes with it, not because of the gender dysphoria itself.
Which is a cop-out because you could say that about anything.
Total cop-out, right? Okay, well, schizophrenia, the suicidality associated with schizophrenia isn't because of schizophrenia, it's because of the depression associated. You can do it with anything, right? Yeah. It's like, no, the underlying root is the disorder itself, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's not because, and this is actually another interesting one. There's a longitudinal study done, right? A long-term study that was done that was showing that it's okay. So 45%. It's actually around higher 45% pre-transition, right? There was one longitudinal study that showed it only drops to about 40% after transition, right? So if you're right, if they're right, if the people out there that's arguing for this being like a lifestyle choice and that it's because of cruelty of people, if that's the case, that only accounts for 5% of the suicidality associated with transgenderism, right? Not the other 40%, the other 2 in 5 that commit suicide because of trans issues. Yeah. And the reason I don't want to use the pronouns, that's why I got called mean, was because I think this is huge, especially we talked about earlier. We did this the first time about kids, right? And like he and she, like these are broad societal implications. But the assistant health secretary in the States, who's a transgender woman named Rachel Levine, was saying to Rand Paul. Rand Paul asked him, how young is too young, basically? Like, do you have any problems with starting to transition kids as early as like 6 years old? Kept dodging the question. Rachel Levine kept dodging the question entirely, wouldn't answer it, right?
Yeah.
And without parental consent, right? If I had a kid, right, they have to call me to give my kid a Tylenol for a headache, but they can start counseling and transitioning my child without telling me.
Yeah, and alcohol, cigarettes, all this kind of stuff. Where you need age of consent, or you're not allowed to have it at whatever the legal age is in your particular area. But then you can attempt to mess with your biological sex. And I don't believe you can.
Start a 6-year-old on puberty blockers and hormone therapy and it's child abuse.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yep. No, man, it's totally insane. And so, getting called unloving and unkind for not using the pronouns when we're talking about it at a societal level, I'm not going to feel bad about that because, and here's the thing too, to talk about kids, right? 98% of children that experience some kind of gender dysphoria in childhood grow out of it by the time they're adulthood. They completely normalized by childhood, where they're totally comfortable in their biological body, right? Yeah. And so it's like a 98% chance of recovery, or you start them on transitioning and they now have a 2 in 5 chance of killing themselves throughout their entire life.
So what is more likely, that the 98% have things all messed up and they need to be treated, or the 2% do?
Yeah.
Well, probably 2%. The 2% probably are correct.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course. It's like it comes down to, let's look at the science, let's look at the facts, and it comes down to the fact that like we both want to see less people killing themselves.
Of course.
Less people with severe mental issues, right? Transableism is a thing too, where it's like, I feel like I identify as an amputee, so I chop off my arm. That's not healthy. It's just not healthy.
Not in this world.
But, but again, if someone identifies as that way, so power to them, right? Like, doesn't make sense. If it is a mental disorder, and this is an honest debate, it's not out of fear, it's not out of hate, it's out of, look, I want to see people thrive and not wanting to kill themselves. And if this is being exploited by a very small activist or political few that's like pushing this whole transgender movement, which accounts for less than 0.1% of the population, we're killing a lot of people to accomplish a political agenda, I think. And that's the way we view it,
sad.
I think. Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah, not at all. So yeah, savage. This is one of the most. This is one of the more fun ones. This is a little more lighthearted, I think, unless you're this guy. But this is one of the funnier comments I got was. Oh, here we go. Okay, so basically, it's all this one intro. This is all from like the same video. I'm not a very good satire writer, I don't think, yet. I want to be.
I appreciate your satire.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Lorenzo. But there's a guy actually I listen to. His name is Andrew Clavin. He's with Daily Wire, who's brilliant. He used to do it 5 times a week, just as one show a week now, but like literally every day. Gut-splitting hilarious satirical intro to all his podcasts, like 3 or 4 minutes. Just brilliant. I'll have to show you one maybe later. But
well, my king is JP Sears. He just splits my gut like nobody else.
Yeah. Oh, he's hilarious, man. And he used to be very non-political.
I know.
And then he got like a couple of Facebook videos demonetized and banned or whatever. And he's like, and he just started coming to the left.
Money.
It was great.
Right there. Oh, he's so good.
Hysterical. Yeah. So JP Sears, Andrew Clavin, look those guys up if you haven't. Or Babylon B is another one. Babylon B actually, if they wanted a genderless Mr. Potato Head, they could have gotten Brian Stelter. Basically, he called Babylon B. They're like a Christian satire site, but they're killing it. They're like one of the best satire sites out there. And I don't think that comes from a bias. They're pretty widely recognized as that.
They're good.
Yeah, but even by like centrist liberals, right? People that aren't crazy leftists, they're recognized as great. But Brian Stelter on CNN, the Chiron on this little piece, he was calling them basically, he's like, they're a fake news site that labels themselves as satire. So he's like, they're actually trying to spread misinformation, but they're calling themselves satire to get away with it, which is just like, either Brian Stelter is too dumb to get the satire, right? That's the only two options he left himself. He's too dumb to get it, or he's a disingenuous partisan hack who's labeling it that because they're really good at undermining the leftist ideas with brilliant satire, and it rankles him a bit. Like he doesn't like
Buddy
that.
guy should look up the word satire in the dictionary.
Yeah, exactly. But I think this is the thing. I lean towards he's number 2. I think he knows what satire is, and I think he's pissed that they're better than he is because he's one of the dumbest people on TV, and they ruthlessly get him all the time. He's like, that's just kind of a "you mad bro" response. And I don't know, but anyways, that's what a satirical intro is. It's like me being facetious. Another fun word to describe saying fake things for fun and comedy, right? And making jokes
to imply a point, obviously.
To make a point, yeah, exactly. So, but what I did is I recognized, I even knew this myself when I put it out. I'm like, this is gonna get some flack, and I knew it was a bit savage. I used the word savage, like I just did it again. Like that was a savage intro, is what I said. And this guy responds, he goes, "Okay, maybe you should read this, or do you want to read it like a sassy kind of like?"
Which one? The top one?
The bottom one, very bottom one.
Very bottom one.
Yeah.
You want sassy?
Oh yeah, give a little.
Sorry, did you just actually reply to my comment that points out the word savage in quotation mark? He takes out the A and puts an asterisk in there. What?
Yep.
It points out the word savage is racist towards indigenous folk, and I try to turn that against me as though I wouldn't be fun at parties? That is absolutely disgusting. It just goes to show you don't care about anything in this whole racism issue except standing up for your own fellow white Christians and their freedom to be ignorant towards BIPOC. I don't even know what that means.
BIPOC. Black and Indigenous people of color.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hyphen. As you've so clearly demonstrated here, that's all caps, this was exactly the issue with the folks. They wouldn't accept anything. Oh, I gotta hit the read more. As races past what they as white folk feel is, and wouldn't be told otherwise until they had enough heat from people asking them to acknowledge what they said was ignorant. Full stop. Whoa!
Yeah.
I didn't quite follow all that. I was very focused on how I was saying it.
You're like just so focused on the sass that I love it. That was great. That was a great reading.
What?
So thank you for that, Lorenzo.
That was very charged with sass.
Okay,
energy
and here's
there.
the thing. He actually, because someone else called me out on something else, and he commented on that. He's just doing this all throughout the comments. He goes in with someone else. He goes, he's describing me. He goes, sounds about white. If that's not a racial slur, so he's accusing me of racism because I use the term savage, which, by the way, look up the term savage. It doesn't just refer, I know that early settlers called the Indians savages, which is, again, the word savage means like primitive, right? Mm-hmm. And this isn't a racist thing. Native Americans hadn't invented the wheel when Europeans came over, right? Yeah. You could still call them a primitive society. There's a lot of beautiful stuff about Native American culture. I'm not denouncing that or decrying that at all. Mm-hmm. But you could very much consider them a primitive society. Hadn't invented firearms, hadn't invented the wheel. Actually, we're from the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of child sacrifice in a lot of the tribes up here, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they got called savages, and that was a word used to describe primitive people that they found, right? Mm-hmm. Which, again, stating a fact, right? People that call them savages now, that's kind of racist because Native American people are not savage anymore, right? They've gone into civilization with the rest of us, right? So, or even if they haven't, even if they kind of respect like the older traditions and stuff, yeah, I recognize that it's racist to call them savages and whatever. That's fine. I'm gonna get in trouble for that one.
but you can't. I mean, things change.
Yeah.
And just because there's one thing associated. I mean, I just have an issue with this.
Yeah.
it's so hard. Vocabulary changes. You can't just.
It's a different time.
It's a different time. It's completely detached.
Morality and social norms change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for them to be living in the past and keep on ringing on this bell as if it's still the case, it's almost like you're steeping your mind in these thoughts as if they're still reality. But we've, there's been a lot of changes since then. And so is the word savage just banned from the English vocabulary? Can we not use it for
Yeah.
any of the other meanings that it has?
Exactly. Which is clearly the way I used it, by the way.
Yeah.
That's what's so disingenuous about this. He's trying to frame me as a racist for using the word savage, when, first of all, even the people back then that called people savages, you can't judge people in the past through the lens of, like, the morality lens of today, right? But even then, I wasn't using it in that context. It has other definitions, right? Look it up. And it can mean like rude or unmannered or harsh, right? Which is, I literally, the direct quote is, bit of a savage intro I just made there, right? I didn't say that I made, anyways. The direct quote is bit of a savage intro. I was talking about myself as being savage, right?
Yeah.
So if anything, I'm insulting myself, right?
Yeah.
I'm being self-deprecating. And he's trying to frame me as like I refer to a Native American as a savage, which would be a racist usage of that word.
They're completely detached. It's not appropriate to try and link those two.
Yeah, totally. I just blew my mind because it's that's kind of the like, and the joke I made was when he first accused me of oh wait, I think we missed the earlier comment. Oh yeah, so this is where he first said it. In local, I should let you do the sassy thing again. In local news, elitist Christian whiner shows true colors by making fun of people who live in one-bedroom apartments and community housing projects. We should talk about that too. Okay. And uses words that are derogatory towards indigenous folks, savage, to make crybaby intro sound edgy and cool. Says he is a glutton for punishment in last episode, where he goes on to deny the seriousness of issues faced by BIPOC. But we have now, in fact, been shown that he cannot handle any criticism at all and drops off any conversation that begins to make valid points that are contrary to his views, which is, again, not true. I've been in the comments the whole time talking to people, right? Yeah, basically, so I was like, wow, my response to that was, you sound fun at parties, and he's like, that begins to make valid points. So he's talking about his own comment, I guess. You're not making any, bud. Nice try. Start making some valid points, and maybe I'll address your argument with appropriate respect they deserve. They don't deserve any. You called me a racist by taking me completely out of context.
Plus, just the tone. I mean, obviously it's text, and you're reading it, and you can't always convey the emotion or the genuine heart behind it. But just the text, you can hear just how.
Totally. He wasn't arguing in good faith.
The energy is off.
Yeah, totally. Didn't pass the vibe check.
He doesn't want to discuss it. He just wants to bash.
Yeah. No, totally. So it's like you start making some valid points and maybe I'll address them with the respect they deserve. But as far as I've seen, you haven't done that. You just called me a racist because you took what I said out of context. By being like a woke nanny. Like, this is the thing. Like, Christians actually used to get made fun of, and I think probably right. Like, oh, don't swear around me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and people got flack for that. Christians got flack for that. I think rightfully so, right? Why are you trying to police or nanny the world, right? People that don't even identify as Christian, and you're telling them not to cuss in front of you. That's just controlling, and like, that's silly, I think, right? But now it's coming from the woke left, which is why I talk about this as a secular religion. It's like, you can't say savage. That's rude to indigenous people, right?
Yeah. No,
it's not. It has multiple definitions, and I didn't use it in that context.
Absolutely.
Right? So, anyways, do we like the person that goes, oh, at a house party, and please stop cussing around me? Do we like that person? No, buddy, you became that person, right? Nobody likes, you're not fun at parties. And so, anyways, that's what he's addressing there. And he says, I don't think I would be fun at parties with people who malign those who live in one-bedroom apartments and have low socioeconomic status with people they don't like as a sick burn, bro. So, and what he's talking about there is, this goes back to the Tanglebank thing, where you had a bunch of, I know some of the people that were coming at Tanglebank. You can watch episode 3, I think. It's called Shut the Falk Up, because their last name is Falk. They own a business called Tanglebank in our city here. And anyways, they got demeaned as racist, and it was totally unfounded and BS, right? Mm-hmm. So what I said is, you have a bunch of liberal college students. And I honestly think a lot of this comes from envy. Like, this is a family that's done well and is very successful and owns a great business, and she's a politician here in Abbotsford. Done well for themselves. You had a whole bunch of liberal college students trying to destroy their livelihood and business and get her removed from city council, and all over nothing. And I break that whole thing down in episode 3. But the reason I made the point, it's like you have, and this is the whole kind of anti-socialist position I take too, is that envy or jealousy against successful people is never a good place to start making policy and petitions, which is what these people were doing, right? with no basis, accusing someone of a racist and then trying to get them removed off city council and destroy their business is an evil thing to do. It's an evil thing to do. And so the point I was making about saying that I'll live in a community housing project, which is true, right, is just show the dichotomy of like, I totally don't, like, I love poor people. You could almost consider me poor. I have been for most of my life. I'm starting to do better now. But I didn't come from a rich family. I was born rich, got myself into a bunch of debt early on, right? I've never been a wealthy or a well-off person, right? I don't care who you are, whether you're Meghan Markle, the Princess of England, right? Or a broke person living in a community housing project. If you have a victimhood mindset that makes you jealous and envious of wealthy people and successful people, and it drives you to do evil things to those people out of pure envy, I'm going to make fun of you. I'm going to call you out for it. That's what I was addressing there. So,
okay. Just along the same lines, I just find it came to my mind. When somebody's like, oh yeah, bad karma on those who, wish me bad karma.
Yeah.
Isn't that sort of a self-defeating, like, I have a friend who posted something on Facebook, and basically it was like, hey, I hope karma eats up all the haters who, thought I, back in the day, how did it go?
Getting everyone who didn't believe in me or hated me back in the day, I hope karma comes and bites them in the butt.
Yeah, basically hopes karma will come and eat them up for, hating on me back in the day. But then it's like, You want something bad to happen to somebody, so isn't it going to come around and bite you in the butt too? Before that bad motive? Like, that to me is like one of those Eden things. So something you said just made that problem.
Well, sort of like there's a lot of like eat the rich stuff right now, right?
Yeah.
And so,
but but then you become rich? Exactly.
That's exactly it.
So now, like, flip it on yourself, right?
You're attacking the wealthy and successful simply because they're wealthy and successful, right?
Yeah. If it's purely, if it's out of hard work, if it's genuine, well, if it's not like deceitful, like take advantage of the poor kind of thing.
There's no evidence of corruption. They built a successful business that's been around in Abbotsford for a long time, right? So there's no evidence of corruption and there wasn't any actual racism, right? It was a bunch of nonsense that was like, again, twisted into this weird woke left nonsense. Yeah. The woke scolds of today, right? And I was drawing the dichotomy as I think it comes from jealousy and envy, right? And so that was the reason for, I don't hate poor people, right? I have been a poor person for most of my life, right? Yeah. And I have like total
can confirm
empathy. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, exactly. Going back to the broke musician days, right? That's not where that comes from at all. And that's a complete, again, they're recontextualized everything. They can't address the arguments in their own merit. So like as conservatives, we always just say like, oh, we're just racist, bigot, homophobe, because that's what we've been called forever. My comment section, literally racist, bigot, homophobe, like tick, tick, tick. I got all three in my like fourth episode, right? And with the exception of a couple of these comments, right? And again, you know who you are, that were arguing in good faith and making good points. Most of them are just like attacking my character. Yeah. They're all just ad hominem nonsense, right? Yeah. Anyways. Craziness, crazy town. I said crazy tis because I was thinking crazy town and craziness. Anyways, crazy tis, crazy what? Anyways, what? I don't know. So I wanted to bring up too is Jordan Peterson. I love this too. Jordan Peterson, my boy.
B Peterson.
Did you do like a bit of an impression there?
What?
I thought you were doing a Jordan Peterson voice.
We're thinking the same guy. Jordan B. Peterson?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. I thought you did it in his voice, it sounded like, which is actually pretty good. Anyways, I'm just happy coincidence. He is a beautiful soul and a very intelligent person, and he's like the smartest person I've ever heard of, right? Again, he's been attacked as the same thing. I've been now attacked as like a transphobe and a racist, bigot, straight white male, blah, 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 the usual list, right? And basically what he says is like in his book 12 Rules for Life, he's famous for his saying like clean your room, right? Is look after your own, what you're in charge of, make sure that's in order before you go out and try to fix the world, right? So all these like a lot of these college liberals, and this is the point I was making, is like you've accomplished nothing in your life, right? And someone made a point about capitalism tying your worth to what you've achieved in life, and I don't think that's true. I think as children of God we all have inherent worth, right? But what I'm talking about is if you have not achieved anything, you have no right to criticize those who have. Clean your own room before you go out and try to fix the world when you know nothing about nothing, right? You got talked to by some leftist professor that gave you some really bad ideas. Now you think you're qualified to go out and fix the world, right? When you can't clean your own damn room, right? And that's what I was trying to address. It's like
Get
lot of
the
these
speck out of your own eye before you take the log out of the other person's eye.
weird. It's like Jesus has been saying it for thousands of years, right? That's exactly it. And it's just like the reason. What am I trying to say? Like, yeah. So a lot of these like college liberals and stuff that are driving movements like Antifa and BLM and critical race theory and the gender theory and all this kind of stuff, right? A lot of the people that are driving this are like these college kids that, like, first of all, a lot of them are very privileged. Like, you're looking at like the Harvards and Yales and stuff, like those kind of kids, right? They're going straight from like mom and dad's place into a college, never had a job, right? So jobless from high school into college, where you're getting indoctrinated by an incredibly leftist academia. And then you start yelling at people who have worked their entire lives to build something, and you want to tear it all down because part of it doesn't line up with what your weird definition of racism is, right? And again, I'm not trying to like diminish racism, actual racism, but what happened with the whole Tangleback thing was not real, right? And so that's what I think this comes from. It's like, clean your room before you start trying to fix the world, before you start getting angry and criticizing and protesting everything and stuff. Get your own life in order, right?
Yeah. I actually got that book. I went through the first 4 chapters and then I got distracted by it.
Read the rest, man.
I want to finish
Read
it.
the rest. He actually, his new one, I think it's called 12 More Rules for Life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got to pick it up soon, actually, because the first one was great. I printed out the rules for life and I posted them on my fridge.
Yeah.
They're like,
one thing I remember is I kind of didn't appreciate, well, I mean, I appreciate Jordan B. Peterson for a lot of his angles and a lot of his perspectives on things. But I did find that in the first few chapters of that book that he's trying to balance all of his ideas without specifically referencing a faith or some kind of a worldview that really he can back all of these ideas. And he kind of like there's a lot of incongruencies with how he grounds things, right? Although he's got a lot of very, I would say, pretty accurate perspectives on things, but he struggles to ground them, which is sort of in a proper, I don't know, I found a lot of conflicting ideas when you really got to the roots of certain things. But yeah,
I think what you're talking about is it lacks like a metaphysical foundation for those ideas. I can kind of speak to that a bit because I've seen him talk about that, right? Because he actually like identifies as believing in Christ, as a Christian, right?
Does he?
Well, like sort of. And this is why I find him phenomenally interesting, and I have a lot of respect for him. But he basically he is one of the most humble people for how ridiculously intelligent he is. He's one of the most humble people too, because he's talked about, he's like, I'm not an expert in Christianity, I'm not an expert in theology, I am an expert in psychology, right? He's been a clinical psychiatrist for like 40 years now, something like that, right? He's like, I am an expert in this field, I will speak to this field, right? And so that's why he talks about, when he talks about the metaphysical, he talks about like narratives and archetypes and stuff and that kind of thing. And he kind of he contextualizes Christianity through a purely, like he looks at it through a completely psychological lens, right?
Which is sort of where I find like there's a little bit, there's lacking substance with how he grounds it.
Yeah, but I don't know that's his job to do that, right? I think he's speaking to his expertise and he's leaving the theology to the experts. And actually there's a really interesting, what was it? I saw an interview recently where he actually breaks down talking about Jesus Christ, because I think he's, even in his own story, I think he's had like, he just went through like a really traumatic time with actually some prescription drug abuse, where he was taking a prescription for something that just kind of like the dosage kept going up and stuff, and it like he became reliant on it, all that kind of stuff. It's a tough story, and he was gone for like a year and a half, 2 years because of dealing with that, right? Getting medical treatment and stuff for it. And he's back now, wrote his new book, but he had a really emotional interview when he's talking about Jesus and like tearing up talking about it, which I haven't seen him do before. And so I think some of it, I don't think it's him being like being a pansy and trying to not, like, I'm a Christian, but I don't want to say it out loud because I'm afraid of whatever. I don't think that's where it comes from at all. I think he's like, I'm gonna stick to my expertise, right? And the like my relationship with Christ is a personal relationship. And I even think too, he even talks about and this comes from the clean your room, like make sure you know what you're talking about before you go out, and you know what I mean. I don't doubt that maybe he talks about that with personal, like I don't think you have to shout out everything you know all the time, despite me having a podcast, right? But I think a religious faith is a more personal thing. So if he wants to keep that between he and his wife or family or friends and not talk about it in a public context, I think it's his prerogative.
His prerogative. I would maybe suggest that maybe the Bible tells us to be a little bit more bold with that.
But the Bible wasn't written when social media was around, right? Or when YouTube was around. So I think if you do that on a personal, and so much of it, I even talked about in this podcast, like I get criticized, especially in the last couple episodes, for like kind of speaking pretty harshly about the left rather than trying to engage the left and have conversations, right? Well, so many of these conversations are so toxic. Yeah. I don't know, and maybe this is just me succumbing to pessimism. I don't know that I'm going to convince people on the left through this podcast. What I do know will happen is I hope to embolden people who share ideals, whether that's, I think I can talk to centrists, I can talk to conservatives, and maybe the odd actual leftist, right? What I think I want to do is embolden conservatives, embolden centrist liberals and whatever, to speak up, right? Because I think conversations happen over a pint.
The conversation needs to happen, and it needs to happen respectfully.
Yeah.
Because right now it's imbalanced, where the left is typically the loudest voice in society, but we want both voices to be loud, and so that there can actually be some conversation.
That's exactly it.
Talk about the important things.
That's exactly it. And so I just don't think, I just think that happens on a personal level. So Jordan Peterson knows enough about psychology to speak to millions, but doesn't feel he knows about Christianity, or wants to keep that more personal, right? That's where real change happens anyways, I think. And he's, with his psychology, because he's such a powerful speaker and because he's such an expert, he's reached millions of people that way through that medium, right? So I totally respect his decision to do that, right? Whether it would be the same thing I do, I don't know. But yeah, I don't think I can pass judgment on him for that. Because I really do think it's very, very interesting. But yeah, I think it's a really important point is maybe we're done for topics, so we could probably wrap up. But maybe kind of end on this, I think, and this is why I wanted to have you on too, is I think conversations are so much fun, so much more fun.
It is.
Right? Me talking alone in my room, getting all excited and having some fun is a good time, and that most of that serves to hopefully embolden people that kind of agree, right? Yeah. No, I don't want to create an echo chamber. What do I want to do? And that's the thing. Because I got accused of that too in the comments of creating an echo chamber, right? Or he was questioning me. He's like, are you trying to create an echo chamber, or are you trying to engage the opposite side? Neither. I would love to engage the opposite side. I don't think many will, at least in a genuine way, or a non-toxic way on like a lot of those comments. But I do want to embolden people who are listening, who maybe line up where we are, to be bold, right? One of the reasons I respect you so much is even being here, because I know what's going to happen now. You and I both know what's going to happen.
Flack.
Right? Get some flack, right?
Oh, maybe I'm used to flack.
And again, not whining about it. People accuse me of whining about stuff. I know I'm going to get canceled. I know I'm going to get mean comments. I counted up the cost and I'm still here, baby. So I'm not whining about it, right?
Yeah.
And you have too. And that's why I think that takes testicular fortitude, right? So props for that. And I think props to the people who are listening to stuff like this. Go out and have conversations. Don't live in an echo chamber. Engage people who disagree, because I think, and I know a mutual friend
in a respectful way.
Totally, yeah, 100%.
That's the only way that we get forward. We can move forward in society is by engaging respectfully and having the conversations. Totally. As soon as things are disrespectful, you lose, and then you this wall goes up, and then the divide begins.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And here's a great example of that. Actually, there's a mutual friend of ours. Who was actually, I was talking to a roommate of his who, from what he told me, it kind of lines up, voice crack myself too, kind of lines up more on the left, right? He left me an incredibly sweet comment on the last one. He actually, he compared, and this, I totally didn't deserve this, but he said he compared me to Andrew Schultz. It's like another one of those great, that's not really satirical, but he's like just not afraid of being politically correct, or not afraid to not be politically correct.
Yeah.
He's well respected amongst comedians as like being one of the best up and comers, just because he just says whatever, and he's hysterical, right? He'll make race based comedy, whatever, and people of all races find him hilarious because it's so refreshing to hear someone just not care about the woke nonsense, right? Yeah. And so he compared my satirical intro to Andrew Schultz, and totally, I don't agree with him. I think it was way worse than Andrew Schultz, but that comment made my day. God bless your heart. But here's the thing: what happened, right? My podcast got out to a buddy of mine, right? And he had a conversation with one of his friends who didn't agree, and that guy went and left a really sweet comment on my video, even though he may not agree with everything I think, right? God, I love that so much, because that's where I think it's real, right? Go out and have the conversations, right? Sit down in a room with an actual person. COVID restrictions. Oh, I'd want to talk to you about COVID, but maybe another time.
We got lots to say about COVID.
Yeah, we do. We can do that today or do that another time.
No time.
No, sorry. That's time. Okay. Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, you've gone way past what you said, so I appreciate that. But and we have way too much to say. That'd be like another hour. Yeah. Really but yeah, have conversations with people, right? And real dialogue, right?
Absolutely.
Do you agree?
Yeah. Totally.
Cool. Simple as that. I love it. That's where real change happens, and that's I think society is one person at a time. And it's not one in the YouTube comments, and it's not one yelling at people on the internet, right? I know I have a podcast, but it's because I want that to spark real conversations, real life conversations that have nothing to do with me, right? Gonna try to be as genuine and as fact-based and as kind and loving as I can be while still making the point.
And having fun.
And having fun. Yeah. Oh God, laugh a little. That's last thing, and then we're done, I promise. So devoid of humor and just so serious and aggressive. And it's like, I know I've been aggressive. I usually try to do that through comedy, right? But it's like, do you find anything about that? Like between the right and the left, who's having a better time right now?
I mean, the right.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Obviously,
I think it's pretty obvious.
Okay.
I feel like the right is way more open to laughing about issues and making points through comedy than the left is. The left is always hate. I can't believe you. They're offended by almost everything under the sun. Yeah. As soon as you make a joke of something or you use the wrong word, they're.
Yeah. Yeah. Jerry Seinfeld won't do comedy at colleges anymore. He hasn't for years already because of how bad it's gotten.
Yeah, and the saying, laughter is the best medicine.
Yeah.
There's so much good to be, brought up. There's so much productivity and health in laughter that can be gained, and people just it's one of the nodes of communication.
Totally.
You can engage a lot better, you can have a lot more fun, you can build relationships, you can have harder conversations a lot easier when there's laughter and there's sort of an uplifting tone to the whole thing.
And you can burn way less bridges, right? That's the thing. Like I still love those people that made really toxic comments. They're friends of mine, right? I know personally like half the people that made comments like that we went through today, right? And does that hurt? Sure. Like it kind of sucks, but I'd forgive them in a heartbeat if they came back and hey, look, that was kind of too harsh, right? Because when I name call generically, right? And I name call people who are doing evil things, like trying to wreck businesses for no reason, that kind of thing. But it's just they seem to take themselves so seriously. And they throw so much weight in their own opinions. I'm going to say this stuff because I think it's important. I think it's fun. I don't think we take ourselves very seriously, right? Try not to. Anyways, right? That's why we're laughing and goofing off and being self-deprecating a lot, is because we're a couple of idiots in a room having some fun, right? And talking about some serious stuff in hopefully a fun and engaging way. But at the end of the day, lighten up, have some fun, laugh a little, love a little. Don't assume people that disagree with you are hateful, terrible people.
Yeah.
Just maybe give them the benefit of the doubt and have some grace, have some forgiveness. Most people are pretty good people and just disagree about some stuff, and that's it. So, Lorenzo, dude, super good to have you on, man.
It's an honor.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a while since we even hung out.
I know.
Because of the whole COVID thing, and who cares? We've been hanging out anyways, but whatever. I don't think we're quite 6 feet apart, so
probably 5.
might get fined or something. I don't know how that works. But well, yeah,
It'd be okay if we're in Costco.
Yeah, we recorded this a year ago, over a year ago.
Probably.
Now, right?
It was, yeah.
Longest 2 weeks of my life. Remember the one? It's the 1 year anniversary this week of 2 weeks
I
just
know.
flatten the curve. Anyways, COVID's a different subject. Pleasure having you on, man. Good to hang with you, and thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed. Feel free to comment. Hopefully a little less toxic than last time. But love you guys. Have a good one. Support us on locals, Twitter, Instagram. Go like a bunch of stuff, comment on a bunch of stuff. Order yourself some good food, and much love. We'll see you next week on the Hemlock podcast. Thanks, Lorenzo.
See ya.
See you guys. See ya. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this week's Hemlock podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends and family. Tell them to subscribe, because if you loved it, then they're going to love it too, obviously. Also, head on over to iTunes to leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps us a lot with the charts. And if you're not going to leave us 5 stars, then forget about it. Don't worry about it and enjoy the rest of your day. Lastly, head on over to the hemlockpodcast.locals.com to become a supporter and receive access to exclusive content and ad-free versions of the Hemlock podcast. Love you so much for listening. Let's continue to ride out this increasingly insane world with irreverence and joy. This is your host, Patrick Jolliker, and much love, y'all. Peace.